you know, honestly, I have to keep saying to teachers, I trust your judgment. You know, because teachers get really anxious about this. Do I have enough evidence? What if I give them a 3 and they go into next year and the teacher says they don't have it? And you know, the answer to that is, well, fine. Then the teacher next year will reteach a bit. But you'll be right most of the time. It's not like we're going to be perfect with everything. We also have to point out to teachers that kids are not walking encyclopedias. Just because they're proficient and they're marked proficient doesn't mean they walk into 3 months later and can just kind of repeat facts, figures, terms, and details. So we ended up, in the end, coming up with the 4th option is what we thought was the best option. Saying to teachers, we want you to have a growing preponderance of evidence that the learner is proficient on that learning expectation. And usually I give them a guideline of 3 to 5 pieces of evidence. I said 3 to 5 pieces of evidence, but here, if your learning target is to count to 10, and you have a young man in front of you going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, don't tell you I need to do. Don't look at them and say you need to do that 3 more times for me because I need 3 pieces of evidence, that kind of thing. So it's a guideline. So that's a critical piece. So we see where we've taken averaging away from the activities and assignments from one level. So picture that we now have all these spaces. We have 3s and 4s, maybe even 2.5, 3.5, that sort of thing. So then what we did was we said we need to take our measurement topic. So every one of these is a measurement topic. And we move it to this level here, where now what we've done is we've listed every measurement topic, and we had to come up with an overall measurement topic score. And we tried to work preponderance of evidence, trend scores, that sort of thing. In the end, right now at least, where we stand right now is we are going to let them average at that point. We feel like we've gotten at least a step away from the activities and assignments. And part of it's because I'm going to go back to this slide, in our measurement topics, in some content areas, there's not a really tight progression. If there was a real tight progression, power law would work well. Those of you that are familiar with that power law trend type of calculation. But we don't have that real tight line, particularly in science and social studies topics. So some of the progressive, like math, English language arts, sometimes you'd say, yeah, it's pretty tight there, but it's not as tight in some of the other content areas. So we ended up with overall measurement topic scores, and we also ended up saying, well, we do group our measurement topics into strands. In this particular example, science has a life science strand and a physical science strand. And so all of the measurement topics and all the work that's being done in life science, we say could actually result in a strand score. And again, that's being done by averaging those 3 scores there. Now, one of the things that we grappled with is proficiency is a 3.0. But we have like hundreds of these learning targets that students are getting 3s and 2s and so forth. And will it be fair to face a graduate or a prospective graduate and say somewhere in this mixture of hundreds of learning targets you didn't get a 3, you got a 2.5, 2.75. So what we have done is talk about what's more realistic is setting a graduation standard that might be an overall average in these areas that might be less than 3. And we've also said maybe that's part of our progression to get to where we actually want to be in the end, because we are putting students into proficiency-based systems sometimes in the middle of their career. So we've had those conversations. Our calculations and in our software program allows our local districts to do whatever they want in that respect. So we go from here. Now notice just as we move ahead, notice there's a space underneath each one of these measurement topics, and I'll explain what is going to go, or I'll show you in a moment what actually goes into those spaces. So we then said we need to be able to recognize learners. We don't want to recognize them by comparing them to each other. We kind of hooked on to the cum laude, Latin cum laude system. Colleges understand it. Parents respond very nicely to this idea of cum laudes. So what we said was, can we create what we call a scoring pattern that doesn't interfere with the principles of learning that we have? So one of the things that we said was one score cannot pull another one up or down. So that, first try at it doesn't impact later tries at it. And so we ended up with this scoring pattern. What we said was, first off, if we don't reach diploma requirement, so diploma requirement, as you see here, says no measurement topic score below a 3.0. And we have, kind of gone back and forth about, is it 3.0? Would we use 2.75 for the reasons I just explained a moment ago? All right, then what we said is there are basically two ways for a student to go beyond what it is we say is a graduation requirement. The first way, and I think I can get back here for a second. The first way would be to say, we look at our curriculum and we say, in order to graduate, learners must be able to get to, let's say, the 4th level of text structures and features. If you go beyond the level 4, you've gone beyond, just like right now when we have a credit system and we say you need 23 credits to graduate, and we also then say to them, but you're going to need other credits beyond that, depending on where you're going on to college. So we still have that sort of behavior where we have all of these measurement topics, students moving in their progressions, and we say, okay, here's the place where it's graduation required. Everything beyond that we're going to recognize as beyond. The other way you can recognize beyond is within every one of these scales, a 3 is the real target for us. And if you go to a 4 level, and we have ways to define what 4 level will look like, and we don't send every student to a 4, it's really important for me to point out that we do not equate 4 with A's. We do not transfer a 1 to 4 scale to a letter system. Because if you say a 4 is an A, then be prepared to figure out what number 5 needs to be, because you're always going to have those learners who want to go above and beyond. So we say target for everybody is a 3, and then we drive students into 4s at different times. Teachers make those decisions. So 2 ways to excel. One is to go beyond on what I call the scope of a measurement topic, and other times to go above. And I equate it to the idea of going deeper versus accelerating in our traditional language that we've used. So if I go back to this scoring pattern, what I'm going to show you that is for cum laude, we've created a scoring pattern in our software that says if a student has all measurement topics, no measurement topics scores below a 3.0, or you could say 2.75, whatever number you want to select. It also has between 10 and 20% of the measurement topic scores greater than a 3 or going beyond. So it's a formula that recognizes a combination of going to 4s and also going beyond. And if you get to that 10 to 20%, then you're cum laude. And then what we basically do is go to 20 to 30% for magna cum laude and then summa cum laude. The 20 to 30, 10%, those percentages are really arbitrary right now. That's why we needed to have a demo high school in the software program to help us understand where our students are at. And we basically are putting profiles in right now of a student that traditionally we would honor maybe as a top 10 student and say, okay, if that student, based on their performance in this system, perform this way, what would our scoring patterns give them as in terms of recognition? So we're doing some testing right now. So what this then allows you to do, if you picture the scoring pattern, and this is actually a bigger picture. We were concerned that you may not visually be able to see us very well today with the technology. This is just a larger picture slide of that that scale that I just explained. So what this allows you to do is to provide special recognition to students in a variety of ways. So imagine that I might be your student, and I may be a cum laude in visual performing arts, maybe in math, maybe in English language arts, or a variety of those things. Maybe I'm just an exceptional music student. And so my transcript can show exactly where I really, really excel. We're going to give an overall cum laude designation for everything. But we also, once we got to this point, we went, whoa, wait a minute. This actually allows us to provide, an opportunity to really recognize a lot of our learners when they really have some really strong talents. And so this part here, I have to tell you that the response from folks that we're talking to out and about, some of our stakeholders, is pretty positive. This piece here, it feels good, it makes people feel good. So we say, okay, we're not gonna have top 10, but what if we have this? We do point out that with cum laudes, the designations of cum laudes, going back here, we're not going to designate that we can only have 10 summa cum laudes. So we're going to say we may have 2, or we may have 12. That's the idea and the honoring that we're not comparing learners with learners. We're comparing them to a set of standards. If they reach it, we're going to recognize that. And then what we have down below here is, on our transcript, is ways in which we can then also recognize beyond proficiency kinds of learning experiences that many of our learners participate in, whether those be the traditional advanced placement classes, whether they be college classes that they're taking.